Yeah, let us continue. I think we read the tips already. Not feeling so hot. Yep, we read that already. So let us continue. This was the first time I'd ever woke with such clarity. It was 5:59, just moments before my alarm would go off. I was amazed at the precision of my internal clock. I had made preparations for the next day of school before I went to bed. I changed quickly and descended to the deserted lower floor. It appeared that my mom was still asleep. Neither breakfast nor lunch was ready. Yesterday I just unilaterally declared that I would be leaving early today, so it couldn't be helped. I slathered jam on some bread and topped it with instant coke. Just as I was finishing up breakfast, Mom rose groggily from her slumber.
あら、ケイチ、今日は早いのね。学校の行事か何か？
別に。
Answering bluntly, I picked up my bag and stewed after stuffing 2 slices of bread down my throat.
もう行くの？お弁当は？もうちょっと待ってくれないとできないわよ。
If I waited for her to make my lunch, then it would end up being the same time as usual. If I did that, it would raise the chances of me running into Rena and Mion on the way. Yes, from today onwards I was going to go to school
今日
alone.
はいいよ。
じゃあお昼はどうするの？
抜け出して商店で菓子パンでも買うよ。
そう。じゃあこれ、お昼代ね。
Oh, what a loving mother she is.
ちゃんとレシート持ってくるのよ。
Instant Coke. Oh yeah. Best breakfast. Just getting some instant Coke like... Oh, that's some good shit. Okay, I'm ready for school. I took the 1,000 yen bill from Mom and slipped it into my pocket.
こんなに早いけど、レナちゃんたちもこんなに早いの？
いや、俺だけ。
レナちゃんには早く出るって伝えてあるの？
I have no reason to tell her every little detail now, do I? Finding it difficult answering the onslaught of questions, I made an annoyed
レ
face.
ナが来たら、ケイイチは先に行ったって伝えてよ。
ちょっとケイチ、待ちなさい。
It's not that I didn't trust my parents. I just couldn't rely on them. They couldn't help me. I could only hope that they didn't get involved. It was safer that way. My mom's annoying voice was cut off by the slam of the door. For the first time since I moved here, I headed down the road to school alone. Jesse recommendation. Oh yeah, that's some good shit. High recommendations for everyone. 5 stars out of 5. Up until now, I had always walked down the same path at the same time each day. So I always met with the same people at the same places. But today was different. I didn't meet the people I would normally, and nobody was at the places where I would have normally met them. Of course, Rena wasn't in the spot where we usually met, and there wasn't anyone at the spot where we would have met up with Mion. The length of the tree's shadows in the morning air, the brightness of the sun, it was completely different type of morning from what I was used to. Without a doubt, it felt strange. It left me with the impression that I had destroyed the illusion Hinamizawa had set up for me before it had enough time to prepare all of the props needed to deceive me.
あら、ケイチくん。今朝は早いわね。みんなで早朝から待ち合わせ？
The person who called out to me was someone we always passed by as they were taking a walk along the edge of the fields. Their name was, I forgot. Of course, this wasn't the spot where we usually passed each other.
今朝は早くに目が覚めちゃったので、気分転換なんです。あまり気にしないでください。
I threw out a random excuse.
レナちゃんやミオンちゃんはどうしたんだい？今日は一人なの？
ええ、ま
I was being asked the same type of questions my mom was asking. So I answered them in the same uninteresting, vague manner. It wasn't funny being asked where Rena was each time I passed by someone. But maybe it was to be expected. It was because for so long we were always together so amicably. Even I felt that if I let my guard down we could still be friends. Stop it, Keiichi. Don't think about that anymore. You spent all day yesterday thinking about how dangerous it was to go soft, didn't you? Beep. Car horn blared up from out of nowhere. Even though I was walking lost in thought, that horn was way too close. A mechanical behemoth barreled at me from behind, catching me completely off guard. By the time I turned around, the van's hulking chassis was almost on top of me. I'd seen plenty of cars veer to the opposite shoulder to avoid pedestrians, but this car was doing the opposite. It felt like there was somebody on the opposite shoulder and the van was swerving in my direction to avoid them. That blissfully ignorant train of thought delayed me from realizing something much, much more important. That large mass was hurtling right at me. Was it going to hit me? The inside of my head instantly flooded with painfully cold liquid. In that moment, the scene before me, no, time itself, had frozen. A terrible driver. Yeah. In the silence of that frozen moment, I compared the van, so close that I had no way to dodge it, and my body, the upper half, twisted awkwardly in order to look behind me. There was no way I could dive out of the way in my current position. If I lost focus now, this moment would unpause and I would probably be plowed over, caught in this silly pose. Bend my upper body towards the paddy by the side of the road? If I bent far enough, I'd get away with just being hit by the side view mirror. As soon as the thought crossed my mind, the temporal stasis was shattered by the deafening sound of the van. The side mirror struck my shoulder, sending me spinning off through the air like a top, locked in my contorted position. Splash. Sent tumbling through the air, I crashed into the muddy paddy by the side of the road. My entire body was soiled and drenched, but the choice I had made in that instant was unmistakably for the best. I was covered in mud, but when the alternative was being hit by the car, it was the closest I could be to being unscathed. Rising out from the paddy, I had enough in me to glare over at the stopped van and yell profanities at the driver. I'm not sure if he was able to see me, but the van sped off suddenly. Yeah, time has frozen for Cage. Time has frozen. 8. The world has stopped the time. 8, 7, 6, 5. I couldn't help but continue yelling out profanities. The disgrace from being covered in mud hurt me more than any physical wounds. I slogged through the muddy paddy and made my way back onto the road. Shit, I'll track you down and sue you. Damn brat, I'll sue! If I go looking for a van, I'm sure to find it in this little village. The path I was on had rice paddies on either side, and if it had become so narrow that one car could barely fit through. It wasn't a place you could tear full speed down in a car, let alone pass by pedestrians. Not only was it a narrow road, but the car just now was closer to my side of the road than the other when it went past me. Even as I cursed, I was desperately trying to suppress the dark cloud roiling up within me. This wasn't just a hit and run. That car just now was trying to run me over, wasn't it? Thinking back, I did feel like there had been a car creeping up on me slowly for a while. That's right, as soon as I parted ways with that person taking a walk, I had that feeling the whole time. If it had wanted to pass me, then it had no shortage of chances. Normally I would have felt suspicious and turned around sooner. But I was lost in thought and now was kicking myself for not realizing it was there sooner. And then, when the path became narrow and there was no one else in sight, he floored it. If I had hesitated for even a moment, the result would have been no laughing matter. As the adrenaline rush from nearly being run over subsided, and the realizations of just how terrifying the preceding events were sunk in, there was no doubt about it. That van was intentionally trying to hit me. A cold, viscous sweat seeped from my scalp and slid down my back before dribbling off. I want to be safe from predators. Yeah, that's it. It's an effective camouflage. I struggled to avoid falling into panic. There was still the possibility that this was really just an accident. Calm down, Keiichi. But also, don't be so naive, Keiichi. Being that lax will get you killed next time. You need to always be on your toes. Don't give them any openings. If my enemy was really out to kill me, then the next time they would use a more reliable method. If that time came, and I was acting like I was now, being covered in mud was the price I had paid for my own naivete. Covered in mud, but without injury. Not even a sprain. I guess this was what you would call the silver lining. I began walking again, this time cautiously. I wouldn't even show a hint of carelessness. I had suspected only Rena and the others up until now. No, it was because I had suspected them that I had believed there were no other enemies. Oishi-san had said so, didn't he? There was the possibility that all the families of the village were involved. Was I really mired so deeply in this situation that I had no choice but to try and carry on as usual? Wouldn't it be safest just to hold myself up in my house? But the moment I abandoned my regular routine, everyone around me would abandon theirs as well. That was just too horrifying of a thought. I recalled the tales Oishi-san told me of when Hinamizawa was still called Onikakushi. A frightening tale of an entire village of demons hunting their prey. Surrounding them and eating them alive. One must not interfere with the demons. One must pretend not to see it. The enemy were numerous, all the village families. The villagers with their unwavering faith in the curse would do nothing to help me. The strong sudden flash of sunshine made me slightly dizzy. I had no idea what was going on anymore. When I suspected it was the work of a man, I would catch a glimpse of Oyashiro-sama's curse. And when I suspected it was Oyashiro-sama's curse, someone would poke their head out. What was coincidence, what was intentional? Who was my enemy? Who was just a bystander? No, what I really truly wanted to know was how did I end up with the proverbial bullseye painted on my back. Eventually, an answer in a form I could understand will appear. I don't care when that will happen. Because until then, I cannot die. That alone fueled my resolve to fight and will keep me alive. Apologies. I'm drinking bottled water. Not bottled, I mean carbonated water. It's making me burp quite a bit. But it is goddamn refreshing and good for my throat. My resolve to fight and will keep me alive. I remembered seeing the metal bat in the gym's storage shed, but there was a padlock on the door barring my entry. At the very least I wanted to get my hands on it before everyone else arrived at school. I circled around the school grounds impatiently. But all I could find were things like pieces of lumber, nothing I could bring into the classroom easily. Then I had an epiphany. I should search inside the classroom. If it was something in the classroom to begin with, then there wouldn't be a problem. I could tell that everyone's indoor shoes were still in their lockers. Good thing I came early, nobody else was here yet. I wondered, what could I find in the classroom? I didn't think I could find an especially effective weapon like a bat. But it couldn't be helped at this point. Until the gym storage shed was open, I needed to find a substitute. A lingering hint of naivete whispered that there was no way I'd be attacked at school. But such soft ideas would no longer protect me. To think that they were slowly making their way into the parts of my life that I had once thought impenetrable. In the worst case, my own house might not be safe anymore. That was an incredibly frightening thought. But I believe that not considering the worst case scenario would have been even more frightening. Anyways, I will survive. So long as I lived, then I will definitely be able to escape this labyrinth of nonsense. Definitely. My exploration of the classroom came to an impasse. That much was to be expected. There was no way there would be anything that could be a weapon in the classroom. In case of emergency, there was probably nothing I could do but swing my own chair around. My gaze landed on the lockers that had come to be used for personal storage. The locker that Mion used to store her pile of games was among them. There was one for each person in the class, all lined up. Of course, there was one for me as well. Oh yeah, there was supposed to be still be a tracksuit in my locker. Seeing me covered in mud would be strange. I should go change later. But first, I needed a weapon. If one of my classmates came, it would be hard to rummage through all the lockers. I swiftly began opening the lockers one by one. They were mostly just filled with things like gym clothes, personal items, and umbrellas. An umbrella? If I couldn't find anything better, then this would have to be my weapon. I was about to give up on finding anything decent when I opened a locker that held exactly what I wanted. It was without a doubt a metal bat. It was well worn and pretty beaten up, but there was no doubt it was usable. Now I do remember who is the original owner of that bat. In that locker that reeked of mold, there also hung a baseball uniform. It was probably the locker of a student in a PV league or something like that. If that was the case, then he'd probably ask for it back. Use an umbrella for self-defense. How fitting of this gift to be here. I mean, if it's like a metal-tipped umbrella, you could probably use that for stabbing people. So it's not unimaginable to use an umbrella as a weapon. At that time I could hear the voices of the children scuffling their way noisily in from the hallway. Amongst them I could make out Rika-chan and Satoko.
おはようございますです。あらあらあら、今朝はお早いですわね、ケイチさん。
I nonchalantly hit the bat I was holding behind my back.
なんなんですの、その身なりは。泥だらけでしたよ。
ああ、まあちょっとあってな。すぐ着替えるから勘弁しろ。
Satoko hype. With that said, I began taking off my clothes. Satoko began to blush just as I expected her to.
レディの前でお着替えなんてしつけがなってませんことよ。
着替えをじーっと見てるレディもしつけがなってないと思うぞ。男子は更衣室がないんだから諦めろ。
As Satoko feigned disgust, she went into the hall, still blushing. Conversely, Rika-chan continued to stare at me, preparing to change.
リカちゃんもレディなら着替えを見てるのは良くないと思うぞ。
僕はレディじゃないですからいいのです。
Knowing what Rika actually is, it puts like how old she is, it makes quite a bit of difference. She deliberately pouted and looked at me with upturned eyes.
じゃあリカちゃんも今からレディだ。
レディなら仕方ありませんです。
Should we put headbats back on? No, we won't put a headbat. Rika-chan, appearing to be satisfied with being considered a lady, made her way to join Satoko in the hallway. Just as I breathed a sigh of relief, Rika-chan suddenly stopped and turned back towards me.
ケイチは野球を始めますですか？
Rika is just 10 years old, definitely nothing else. And definitely nothing suspicious about her. It seems that Rika-chan had noticed the bat. Yeah, one headbat for happy Rika. We'll replace the umbrella gif. Because it's the least creepiest one. And we'll put the Rika headbat because it's the happiest headbat. seems that Rikano-chan had noticed the bat.
ちょっとさ、体がなまってさ、ちょっと素振りでも始めようかなってな。
健康に気を使うのはとても良いことだと思いますです。
He was talking like an old lady despite her appearance. How suspicious. After saying that, Rika-chan started to leave once again but stopped and looked back at me once more.
そのバットなくさないでくださいねです。
It seems she already knew that I took out of someone's locker. There was no name on the locker door. I didn't know whose bat it was, but I would be borrowing it until they complained. It wouldn't be for long, just until the gym storage shed was opened. After quickly changing into the tracksuit, I checked the time. I still had plenty of time before class began because I came so early. I took the bat in one hand and went out to the schoolyard. That was of course to practice my swing. I needed to make it known that I would always have a bat on me so I could practice my swing. At some point, the sunlight had become even stronger. Disregarding my classmates as they made their way to school, I took my position in the shadow of the school building. I wasn't the academic type and I wasn't much of an athlete either. I might get muscle pain if I just suddenly started swinging. I should at least start out with some warm-ups. I doubt anyone would think I was doing something out of ordinary, which was the exact opposite of my actual mental state. I gripped the bat and swung lightly. The bat was by no means light. The weight would make it a reliable weapon when I needed it to be. Of course, I could only pray that the moment I needed to use this as a weapon would never come. Just carrying it around could deter attacks against me. At least, that's what I hoped.
あれケイちゃんあんた何やってんの？
Being bombarded with such a hysterical voice, I jumped.
ああ、ケイチくん、野球部だよ。野球部だよ。
It was Rena and Mion.
先に行ったって言われて驚いたけど、ケイちゃん、あんた何やってるわけ？
見てわからないかよ。素振りだよ。甲子園だよ。
For the championship.
ダイエットってケイちゃん、そんなに太ってたっけ？
ああ、知らなかったろ。実は三段腹なんだ。もちもちでタプタプなんだぞ。
もちもちでタプタプ。
レナ、変な想像しなくていいぞ。
I disrupt Rena from imagining something so vulgar. To disrupt Rena from imagining something so vulgar, I ruffled her hair messily.
じゃあまあ頑張って県大会を目指してちょうだいよ。おじさん応援してるわ。野球部の強い高校教えよっか。そこにいる左腕の亀田くんがすごいピッチャーなんだけどさ。頑張ってね。
Seems they've made me out as some kind of local prodigy, but oh well. Well, if I really did make it to the championship, it would be a cinch. After all, I'd be the pitcher and the catcher. I'd pitch the ball, then run past the ball I just threw and change over to being the catcher in a burst of super incredible explosive speed. I laughed dryly at that ludicrous image. Coming back to my senses, I smashed the bat against the ground.
くそ！何笑ってんだよ、俺！
I pounded the ground over and over. With each impact, the reverberation traveling through the bat stung my hands. If they make me smile like that, I don't allow anyone close to me. Don't trust anyone, no matter how many times I tell myself that. If they made me smile like that, I already knew quite well that there were demons dwelling in my smiling friends. But I just couldn't believe it. Did that kind of split personality really exist? Like how Rena confessed to the doctor, were they simply being possessed by Oyashiro-sama? In other words, did the supernatural being like Oyashiro-sama really exist, and was it possessing everyone to try and kill me? Yeah, that would be wonderful. If only everyone were actually my friends all along and everything was all just Oyashiro-sama's fault.
前原圭一のバカ野郎だから
I yelled out, drawing out all the power from the pit of my stomach and raised the bat violently into the air.
甘えるんじゃね
As I screamed out with all my might, I beat the metal bat into the ground over and over. With every impact, my weakness was being beaten down. Smash. Forget. Smash. Don't be soft. Smash. Know your enemy. Smash. Like hell I'd let them kill me. My shoulders heaving up and down from my ragged breathing, I heard the first bell ring just as I calmed down. But what do we have here? Yeah. It's a lovely image to replace. We'll change the headband to something more appropriate. It is quite an appropriate picture for this moment, I think. Because it fits quite well. I think it's from the, like, from this exact moment, so. Maybe? I'm not sure. As I gasped with a sudden realization. That was the final bell. As I felt all the tension drain from me, I let out a deep breath. My mind was in a muddled state for much of the entire day. I didn't feel like I was awake, but it didn't feel like I was asleep either. I couldn't say it felt especially comfortable, but I felt a kind of relief that the sanctity of the school part of my daily life had yet to be violated. How long would I have to keep on living like this? I could only grit my teeth and bear with it as this living hell slowly gnawed away at me.
ケイチくん、やろうやろう。部活の時間なんだよ。だよ。
The sound of Rena's voice brought me back to my senses.
ほらほらケイちゃんぼーっとしない。机を寄せて寄せて。
Everyone was moving their desks together as usual. That's right, it was a happy fun club time. Yeah, happy fun club times. I had no intention of taking part. I haphazardly stuffed the contents of my desk into my bag as I prepared to go home. It was a weak-handed gesture to avoid having to actually say, I'll be going home now.
なんだよケイちゃん。今日も直帰なわけ？
Mion sounded quite disappointed.
気分が乗らないんだ。しばらくほっといてくんないかな。
The tone of words that spilled from my mouth matched Mion's disapproving glare. Whenever the soundtrack goes silent for a second, I always get chills. It felt like the air in the room had dried out. Satok looked like she was about to say something, but perhaps dissuaded by the mood, she swallowed her words and stayed silent. Nobody said a thing. I took that to mean that I could leave if I wanted. But the collective gaze of the four of them, like the tiny pins used to mount an insect in a display, held me in my place. Rena was the one who cut through the heavy mood.
ケイチくん、やっぱり女の子と一緒に遊ぶのなんか嫌だったかな。
Rena is a good girl. She said it in such a melancholic tone that it sent a wave of pain racing through my heart. If this pain was going to kill me, I wanted it to be the soft part of me that could still feel pain. I tore at my chest, violently tearing out the pins that held me in place.
そういうわけじゃねえよ。
I'd only be hurting myself by saying anything more, so I swallowed my words. Cutting things off there, I turned away and exited the classroom. They didn't speak a word to me as I left. It was a long, dull trip back home, but I didn't lose focus. I firmly squeezed the grip of the bat, which was already soggy from sweat. Realizing that, I wiped it down with my sleeve. If something were to happen, I wouldn't want it to be slippery. Since this morning, I'd become especially sensitive to the presence of cars. Even while walking, my ears pricked up and sought out threatening sounds and presences that could be closing in. Why we hurt Rena's feelings? She's such a good girl. Just look at all of these lovely gifts we have of her. There's nothing bad that she has ever done. Right? Right? Anyways, presences that could be closing in. And that was why I could hear it. Without doubt there were footsteps. Those footsteps had matched up perfectly with mine for a while now. From what I could sense, it was just one person. But I had no intention of being careless. Did they intend to follow me like that car this morning until we were in a good location to assault me? Then it wasn't a good idea to keep walking like this. I stopped walking and looked back. The wooded path crowded with trees responded with silence as if there was nobody there to begin with. But I wouldn't be fooled. I was certain footsteps were following me. And just as I stopped, the footsteps stopped as well. Meaning the person following me wanted to keep their distance. That was without question proof that I was their target. I held my breath waiting for that presence to panic and start moving again. Trees rustled with the sound of the wind. The Higurashi also joined in the dissonant chorus, trying to throw my focus into disarray. Had 5 minutes passed, or had I been like this for a whole 30 minutes? It was so hard to breathe that I might have suffocated. It seemed like I would be the first one to panic. Without a doubt, he was lurking in the shade of that tree with a bated breath. Then I'd make the first move. I fixed my grip on the bat. I raised it up to my shoulder to be ready to swing it at any time. With all my might, I screamed at whoever was hiding in the shade of the trees. But the presence in the shade didn't budge. Until the moment I found them, they had no intention of revealing themselves. Hi, Nagels. I hope you've been well. It has been quite a lot of fun already in the stream. Had a lot of fun with Wings of Y. Had fun with completing one mission of actually 2 missions of StarCraft. So that was fun. Until the moment I found the bullet. I screamed out angrily at them again, but even still they didn't move at all. Then I'll go over there myself. With all due vigilance, I approached step by step. Stepping into the tree's shadow, I saw a human figure there. That figure was curled up like a small animal. Oh, Rena's a good girl. Then, when she realized I had found her, her expression softened. She seemed apologetic, but wasn't going to speak a word. I wouldn't accept that silence and screamed the question at her. The intro scene of StarCraft on stream. No, I haven't actually, but I have already watched it and I didn't have anything to say about it, so it was really nothing especially evocative for me. Oh, poor Rena, we are just accusing her of things without any ideas, right? Right?
別にその
This can go one of 2 ways. Rena was in a panic with tears welling up in her eyes. But it was obvious that she had been following me.
ケイチ君がお休みしたからレナもお休み。
関係ないだろ。俺なんか気にしないで遊んでろよ。
だってケイチ君のこと心配で。
Thinking about how I'd been acting until now, it wasn't hard to imagine that my behavior could have been perceived as strange. So Rena was concerned. At quick glance, that's how it would seem. The two ways were the obvious way, which would be that she would only go be sad and we would be friends all over again. And of course there's the creepy way that it could go. Which I'm afraid that it will go. But I wasn't going to let my guard down that easily. Even if that was really the case, she still wouldn't have to do something like try to tail me. She should have called out to me when I was leaving and gone out right with me. But Rena didn't do that. She kept her distance from me and matched my walking speed. Yeah, this is probably going to go the creepy route. On top of that, she matched the sound of her footsteps and deviously tried to hide her presence from me. Then after she realized I noticed she was there, she held her breath as she tried hiding from me. She wore a timid expression that would force one to take pity on her, but without a doubt, she was tailing me.
もうついてくんなよ。
Still glaring at Rena, I continued walking onwards. After I'd walked for a bit, she ignored my command and began walking again, so I yelled at her once more.
ついてくるなって言ってるだろ。
だってレナの家も同じ方向だし。
じゃあレナが先を歩けよ。レナが見えなくなったら俺も歩く。
It could go the cute mode route. Yeah, it could go. But that is unlikely. Very unlikely. I moved out of the way and waved my bat violently to urge her forward.
レナはケイチ君と一緒に帰りたいな。
I can't remember what happens, so I'm really uncertain of how things will go. I'm really uncertain. Really uncertain. But this will be interesting. Making a pitiful expression, she meekly squeaked out the words in a voice that she knew would cut into my heart. That agitated me to no end. I knew it was a lie. If you wanted to go home together, then you should have called out to me. Now you're just blurting out random lies.
ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい。
It seemed that the seething anger within me was written all over my face. Even without me saying anything, Rena had understood what I was feeling inside.
分かったならほら行けよ。
I swung the bat, urging her to walk. Rena looked back and forth between me and the bat and started walking hesitantly, then stopped again.
早く行けよ早く。
行くから。そのバットやめてよ。怖いの。
It feels really horrible to be so mean to Rena, who is such a good girl. Such a good girl. Yeah. Rena guarded herself while pointing at me holding the bat. She may have realized that I wasn't planning on using this bat for baseball. I lowered the bat but still guardedly opened the way for her.
行けよ。これなら文句ないだろ。
There was nothing else she could protest. She passed by me timidly so as to not set me off. As I watched her pass by, she stopped completely after having barely moved at all.
おい立ち止まるなよ。
Then a powerful gust blew past us, barraging my face with dust. And here we go. Here we go. The dust got into my eyes and clouded my vision. While rubbing my eyes with my left hand, I swung blindly with the bat in my right, protecting the small opening I had presented. But Rena didn't even try to attack during that opening. Attack me? No, she hadn't budged an inch. I could tell from the sound of her fluttering skirt in the wind. As her skirt settled, so did the silence. At that moment, the voice inside of me immediately warned me of impending danger. I was caught by surprise. The smell of the air had changed. Without me realizing it, the air around me suddenly felt like a calamity was about to befall me. It was like the air had suddenly become invisible concrete, like Rena and I were locked in this space. Rena didn't move an inch. Also unable to move, I stared at her back. Rena was the first to break the silence. Instantly she altered her stance. I felt like I had just witnessed her shift from Rena into that other person who looks like Rena. But the voice was one I knew well, which filled me with kind of a bewildering pity. Let me just do this. Carelessly, I felt a relief upon hearing that pitiful voice.
ごめんね。聞いてもいい？
Too shy to even turn around, Rena squeezed her voice out desperately, as she trembled.
なんだよ。
あのね、
I'm. This is really quite exciting.
どうしてバットなんか持ってるのかな？
The question Rena asked was by no means unexpected.
俺が何を持ってたっていいだろ。
でも、昨日まで持ってなかったし。どうして突然？
別に突然でもいいだろ。俺がバットを持ってるとおかしいかよ。
だって圭一君、野球とかしない人だったでしょ？
What do you know about me, girl?
おかしいよ。
I couldn't tell what kind of answer she was looking for, and I was getting tired of answering her. I feel like it could happen at any moment.
突然、野球がしたくなったんだよ。それじゃおかしいか？
おかしいよ。
She answered instantly, and that annoyed me slightly.
突然野球がしたくなった。素振りがしたくなったからバットを持ち歩いてる。それのどこが変なんだよ。
変。おかしい。絶対。
I wanna make it to the... Okay, fine, we'll keep it at that moment.
なんで圭一君まで。
Oh, it's going to happen now.
ぶつくさとうるせえやつだな。俺がスポーツに目覚めるのがそんなに変かよ。
I tried to sound a bit more threatening to the end of the conversation. To end the conversation. Until my suspicions about Rena were cleared, I had no obligation to answer her questions.
ごめんね。そんなに怒らないで。
Rena still didn't turn around and spat out words of apology one after the next.
最後に一個だけ教えて。
And now she's gonna turn.
これ以上話す気も教える気もねえよ。早く行けよ。
I yelled loudly at her, causing her to flinch like she had been struck. Seeing her in such a pathetic state caused my heart to ache sorely. But even though she was afraid, she stubbornly kept herself from moving. Before I was able to threaten her again, Rena asked her final question. This...
なんでバットまで同じなの？
Oh, the same? What did she mean by the bat was the same? I had no idea what she was talking about.
お前何言ってんだ？
だからなんでバットまで同じなのかなって。
remember what... I do now remember what she means by this.
何を言ってんだか全然わかんねえよ。
Do I have the semi-blind in that? Yeah, I do have the semi-blind in here. That's good, because I still haven't like played it, but I don't have complete recollection of the events, so it's interesting.
もっとはっきり言え。
Even still, Rena didn't turn around. After inhaling deeply, she screamed.
だからどうしてバットまでサトシ君と同じなの？
サトシってえ？
Upon hearing that name out of the blue, I became dumbfounded for a brief moment. By Satoshi, did she mean the student who transferred out last year? No, that couldn't be. Rena had tried to cover it up by saying he transferred, but Oishi-san told me quite clearly that he was missing. He was the student who sat at my seat up until last year. He was believed to have been deemed away by Oyashiro-sama's curse. I didn't know the details about his disappearance. The aunt he lived with was killed the night of the Watanagashi by a drug addict, and not long after that he suddenly vanished and was now missing. That Satoshi and I were... what? My gaze fell to the bat in my hands. Could it be? Satoshi Hojo. It was a bit difficult to see, but that was what was written on the white tape at the end of the bat. I see, so this was Satoshi's bat.
ああ、これサトシのバットだったんだな。誰も使ってなかったんでちょっと借りたんだよ。いいだろそれくらい。
そんなことじゃないの。
The way Rena said that made it seem like this bat was something that should never be touched. Like it was some sort of offering at a shrine, or a memento of the deceased. I could only stand there, perplexed and unable to respond. Rena continued speaking without waiting for a reply.
サトシ君の時とどうしてそんなにまで同じなの？
Eek. Rena was talking about more than just a bat belonging to Satoshi.
サトシ君もそうだった。野球チームには入ってたけど、本当は野球なんか好きじゃない人だったのに。
それが俺とどう関係が？
サトシ君もある日突然バットを持ち歩き始めたの。
Yes. It is really quite eye-opening.
チームに入ってただけでスポーツなんかしない人だったのに。
What about it? I closed my mouth before I could say that out loud. Listen carefully, Keiichi. Rena is trying to tell us something important.
サトシ君もね、ある日突然一人で登校するようになったの。ケイチ君みたいに。そしてね、ある日突然素振りの練習を始めたの。ケイチ君みたいに。そしてね、ある日突然バットを持ち歩くようになったの。ケイチ君みたいに。そしてね、ある日突然。
Then he suddenly... What? Rena had swallowed her words. Rena's sudden silence brought a hush back to the surrounding area. It was then that I could finally digest the content of the entire conversation. She was saying my chain of actions was exactly the same as Satoshi's. What was the meaning of this? Up until just now, I'd forgotten all about Satoshi. I had never paid much thought to him in the first place. Not only that, I didn't even know anything of what he'd done. My actions today should have been my own creation after all that planning I had done. But they had been the exact same as Satoshi's? Then Satoshi, no, more importantly, if both Satoshi and I acted the same, then there was a really good possibility that what happened after would be the same.
レナ、ある日突然サトシはどうしたんだよ。
Rena knew. She knew what became of Satoshi. No, forget about what happened to a guy in the past. Rena knew what was going to happen to me.
答えろよレナ。サトシはどうしたんだよ。
With that, I grabbed Rena's shoulder violently and forcibly turned her around to face me. And here we go. Yep. Yeah, here we go. As I faced her, I felt a jolt travel through my entire body.
言ったよね、ケイチ君。
It was that person that I didn't know. At least, it definitely wasn't the Rena Ryugu I'd been talking to up until now. The voice just now didn't have a trace of the trembling or emotion that it had had before. The amount of regret I felt for turning her around so carelessly was unsurpassed. That gaze that pierced like a cold needle, the smile on her face that invoked an image of having been carved out by a knife. Chills went down my spine, my mind froze under a layer of rime. Both of Rena's eyes pierced through mine, leaving me unable to look away. As if to remind me of the fear from that time before, Rena brought her face close to mine, so close that I could feel her breath. Her face had filled my entire field of vision. Then her sharply shaped lips grew even sharper, like the curve of a crescent moon. She grinned.
言ったよね、圭一くん。
After a short pause, Rena repeated the same words again.
サトシくんはね、転校しちゃったの。
Transferred, meaning what? What Rena meant must have been some new definition of transfer that I was previously not aware of. Yeah, it rhymed surprisingly well. I was quite surprised of that as well. Let me check, can I see the... Oh, there it was. Chills went down my spine. My mind froze under a layer of rhyme. And I don't know how to rhyme with rhyme. My throat and lips dried up. I couldn't even acknowledge what I had just heard. All I could do was swallow down my own saliva. It would seem that Rena saw that as a nod. She pulled her gaze back and spryly stepped back 2-3 paces. As she did, my legs gave out and I felt my knees pathetically. Rena and my own knees underneath her emotionless smile. Me on my knees underneath her emotionless smile. That had to be a very odd sight indeed. Seeing me in that pathetic state, she neither scoffed at me nor held out her hand. But I could neither stand nor escape with her gaze shooting through my eyes. Is that still the... No, it's her normal state right now. Weird. There was undoubtedly a metal bat in my hand, but right now it was useless to me. I was like a fly caught in her web. Heavy sweat beaded all over my body. I could feel it dripping from my skin.
しないよね、圭一くんは。
Rena finally released me from that cage of time after what felt like an eternity. But her question was missing something important and was incredibly vague. Once again I swallowed hard, urging her on.
何をだよ。
What did she not want me to do?
転校。
Well... That is lovely. Pinch hitter is the one that we got. Okay, achievement that we got. Let me pause the recording here and